over 9/11, then presided over the funerary rites of these people and the memory of them. You start looking at things, and I read a story about the insider trades, and I probably wouldn't have thought much about it, except one of the trades was the client, Marcia McLennan. And then I looked at the other trade, and it was American Airlines. And then it's like, from the news, American Airlines hits directly into Marcia McLennan, and that's what triggers the trades to be valuable. So then I'm like, all right, I got a lot of unanswered questions, but I can't answer how Muslim extremist terrorists could do that. So then you investigate that further, and whether you want to go into, the truth and lies of 9/11 by somebody like Mike Rupert, or any of the other various people who have addressed that in a smaller fashion. You have insider trades, and when you track those trades, they go back to A.B. Brown, which is Deutsche Bank, which was the first place where Silverstream built their financial private client portal and installed their software. So, okay, now I got 3 hits. And then you find out the guy who's presiding over that bank, well, he's the executive director of the CIA now. He's the number 3 at the CIA. How did the Muslims get him in that position? Like, I was just amazed at how the 18 hijackers got so much done and were able to get, billions of dollars of money out of there and do these trades. And, oh, by the way, how did the terrorists get,
When they analyzed the stock market after 9/11, the CIA discovered a massive shorting of airline stocks. When the stocks hit bottom on 9/12, somebody made a fortune.
Come in.
He's gonna go off in a little bit. You got 38 minutes out of that hour on there, all right?
Yep.
Corey's going up in probably very shortly, and you only have like 20 minutes left on that.
All right.
Okay? So
I'll wrap this up then.
Okay.
So the point being, if I had to make a succinct summary, they say the official story is that fires brought down the World Trade Centers, and I would say do a Google search for Edna Cintron. She was a Marsh employee who stood in the gaping hole while the smoke and fire is coming out, proving that it wasn't so hot that a human couldn't cry for help and wait for somebody to come pick her up, and no one ever came to rescue those people. So when you see that, you know that the fires weren't too hot. Now, independently, I got a page from Richard Bruhart. The last page I got from him was, why isn't anyone responding? Why isn't anyone coming for us? And that they weren't in the fire, but they were getting hit by the smoke. So, when you break down the fact that on September 10th, 2001, Donald Rumsfeld comes out and says that $2.3 trillion is missing.
Pentagon. The day before 9/11, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld declared war, not on foreign terrorists.
The adversary is closer to home. It's the Pentagon bureaucracy.
He said money wasted by the military poses a serious threat.
In fact, it could be said that it's a matter of life and death.
Rumsfeld promised change, but the next day, the world changed. And in the rush to fund the war on terrorism, the war on waste seems to have been forgotten.
My 03 budget calls for more than $48 billion in new defense spending.
More money for the Pentagon when its own auditors admit the military cannot account for 25% of what it already spends.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
$2.3 trillion with a T. That's $8,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. To understand how the Pentagon can lose track of trillions, consider the case of one military accountant who tried to find out what happened to a mere $300 million.
We know it's gone, but we don't know what they spent it on.
Jim Minery, a former Marine turned whistleblower,
and they can't account for it. And then the next morning, the section of the Pentagon with the private contractors who are responsible for telling us where that money is blows up. Right? I can't figure out how 18 hijackers wanted to do that, let alone carried all that out. So those were reasons I started to question what was going on. And I wasn't like the government did it right away, or any other group. I just knew that what I was being told was not the truth, and that the people I trusted to give me my news were not giving me the whole story. And if you fast forward into everything that's gone on, everything that goes, against us adversely as human beings, right now in this culture has to do with the suppression and censorship of information. Because if you had the information and you had it at the time you needed it, you would be able to make informed choices, and therefore a small group of people would not be able to manipulate billions and billions of minds on a daily basis without rest, right? And even though we don't have billions of dollars to spend on flashy graphics and all sorts of corporate produced, melodrama, what we have here is cinema real, because what we're doing is, we're having conversations that we have anyway, but we're turning a camera on so that people who aren't here can see and kind of get a feel for, what goes on beyond our, the corporate TV screen, because they won't show you this on TV unless you put it on cable access, which I hope you do in Colorado. But did I answer your question?
Yeah. You would just know who I was talking about.
The players I knew at Marsh, and this was from the IT side. It wasn't me trying to figure out the global conspiracy against real people. Ellen Clark was the global CIO, and she's the one who received the award for AIG and Marsh completing that technological bridge in the summer of 2001.
The Accord Award.
Right, the Accord, ACORD. So if you Google Marsh plus ACORD, you'll come up with Ellen Clark and them holding the award for us doing it for them. Under her was Gary Lasko, who was the North American CIO.
Gary Lasko
is dead. He died that morning.
That was somebody you told was the you told about.
Lasko is the guy I talked to on June 4th who verbally said, yeah, you guys can have phase 2 of the project. And to me, that translated to like $1 million commission check. So I was quite happy to get that call. And when I told that to my boss, I thought he was quite happy. And then I sent that email later that night asking about the last paycheck, right? Because I had money on my mind that night. And that came full circle really quick, because they had somebody fly in the next morning with paperwork dated the night before. So within 12 hours of me sending that email, I was out. So I would say they monitor email. So what was the other question you asked?
So Endur Singh.
That's deep, man. JP Morgan.
Because I can tie in her work, and I'm probably going to do it in our
Well,
phone.
I mean, where you would tie that in, and this isn't my forte of research, but I know about it, is there's a couple different things. Cantor Fitzgerald was not only doing the bullion trading for the Federal Reserve, but they're also doing something called carbon trading. And when Cantor Fitzgerald went out of commission that day, all their contracts rolled over to JP Morgan, right? And so you have that aspect. JP Morgan coming in after Bear Stearns, right, and getting out of the cheap price too. So there's a lot going on with that now. JP Morgan was, of course, the Pope's, the Vatican's banker in North America, and also works on behalf of the Rothschild family, right? And when I heard about the Rothschilds, right, because in circles where people think critically and question things and look at things for themselves, these topics come up, and I thought that sounds totally unbelievable, like incredible, like not credible. And then I went to Barnes & Noble, and there's a 2-volume set on the Rothschild family, the world's banking dynasty. And then, to me, that back then, that was real. Like, when you see it in Barnes & Noble, that must be real. Just like when people see it in TV, that must be real. And then I discovered almost all the books I want to read, they don't sell and won't carry at Barnes & Noble, right? And then I stopped voting with my dollars at Barnes & Noble, and now I buy from independent booksellers who I usually get stuff used from, because the best books are not the ones being printed right now, So I covered the top executives at Marsh that I knew about, right? Going up to the CEO, Jeff Greenberg, and his dad was the CEO of AIG. And when you have a father whose job was, chairman of the Council on Formulations and the chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank.
Talking about Greenberg right now.
Greenberg, right. Jeff Greenberg's dad is Hank Greenberg. So Jeff's the CEO at Marsh, and Hank is the CEO at AIG back in 2001. And AIG owned this little security company called Kroll Associates. And Kroll Associates is who John O'Neill had worked for, supposedly on the 34th floor of World Trade Center 1. But if you compare that evidence to the testimony of Willie Rodriguez, you hear Willie say that floor was vacant, and that's where he heard strange noises coming from. So that said to me, wait a minute, what is going on here? Because those things, there's a conflict of fact.